with
So,
berries red, white, and blue. Yes. So
yes.
happy American 4th of July. Us traders from the English, right when we left and
Shh, I'm not
celebrated
saying
our independence, crossing the pond.
that. Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the newsstreamingnetwork.com, WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, radio, TV, and podcast #1 internet singles talk network. And this is Let's Talk Dating with Christine and Barry. Hi, Barry.
Hi, Christine.
And in
Yes.
honor of the 4th of July that we call Independence Day, today we're going to talk about, are you an independent dater?
Mm-hmm.
Boy, my head just went so many different directions with that. I think that this is going to be lots of levels. Because sometimes we
Yes.
really kind of hone in and just stay on that one subject. And this one just seems like there's just so many places to go with this.
Oh, yeah. And I can speak definitely from personal experience myself. So we've got lots to talk about today.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things I hear as a complaint from women
Mm-hmm.
is men do not like independent women,
Mm-hmm.
which in my side, and I would so want to hear yours,
Mm-hmm.
what my answer is to them is generally the men I talk to who are healthy, have done their work, really don't want needy women. They like women that have interests and jobs and family and friends and are passionate about stuff and doing stuff and have things that are their own things that they can come back and talk to in a relationship. The thing that often we women get into doing is we have to do everything ourselves, and then there's no room for a man. He likes having a job. He likes having a, a way to provide for us. He likes having where does he fit in our life? And so it's not the independence, it's that there's no, and this is going to sound terrible, but I'm going to use the word anyway. There's no room for a dependence. There's no room for a receptive part where the
Right.
man can contribute to our life. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear your thoughts from the Y chromosome side of the world.
Well, first of all, I want to just add to the conversation. There is a spectrum of independence as well, because what one person calls independence could be something else to another person. So just to keep that in the conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
But to speak to that, what you're saying, I am very clear, thankfully, over all the work I've done over the years, I do not want a dependent woman. And I'm using the experience, for example, when I talked this in the previous episode about being the knight in shining armor with the, the the maidens in distress, that sort of thing, which is the whole crap thing I went through when I was a lot younger. That was kind of the dependence that was so weighing down. There was a resistance or resentment about that. So being around independent was a good thing.
Mhm.
But to speak to what you said also, yes, independent women, and this is the thing, independent in lifestyle, but not necessarily independent in the emotional connection, because there's a difference there too. Because the thing is, yes, I want to be with a woman who lives her own life, stands her own 2 feet, that doesn't need me to save her, thank God. But also wants to be someone that she can play with and dance with and have as we talked before, an interdependent connection with.
Yes.
And we talked in previous episodes about independence, codependency, and interdependence. But there's another layer with this piece about independent dating, because, and I just want to put another piece on the table just to jump in right now, is I'm also thinking about, like, for myself being single now for 18 years, I've gotten kind of an independent lifestyle where I'm fairly much whole and autonomous on my own. So if I have somebody else show up in my life, a woman to date, how much of my life do I have to change to fit her into that life? So that's another
Mhm.
independent issue as well.
And how much would you have to change to fit into her life?
Indeed.
Especially our age, we have a lot of history. We have a lot
Mm-hmm.
of things that we've hopefully discovered that this is the way my life feels comfortable. And
Yeah.
so it's certainly important to first figure out where you are on that spectrum. Do you pop out of bed in the morning? Are you a slow getter upper person? Are you the person like me that wakes up hungry, or somebody that abhors breakfast? I mean, those sound so petty, but those things can really add up. That
Yeah.
you figure out who you are and what keeps you upright. What are the things that are mandatory in your life? I need this much sleep. I need this much alone time. I need this much people time. No matter how much in love you are and how excited you are about being with this person, there's still some boundaries around your personal well-being. And when you figured that out and got really clear about it, and then you say, these are the kinds of things that keep my life going. And a person that really cares about you and wants to be in your life will go, great, I want to hear those things. And how does that fit with my life? So let me tell you my life. So
Yeah.
I said, one of my things I ask men when I'm going out with them in my myriad of questions is, tell me how you spend your typical Sunday from the moment you open your eyes till that you close your eyes at the end of the day. And it's been really interesting because there's some that they wake up wide awake at 5 o'clock in the morning and they go running. And so I said, oh, do you need company? Does that something you need your partner to do? Because if they say yes, we're done. Because that is never going to be me. I can't
Indeed.
imagine waking up at 5 and certainly not running.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's no, it's my get it together time. Okay. And then what do you do? Well, I come back. And if you're with a partner, what would you do? And, oh, I'd much rather climb back in bed after a shower. And I go, wow, that would work for me. And then get up and make breakfast together. Okay. Because sometimes we want to go, oh my God, they get up and run in the morning. They're not my person. That's not necessarily so. I like
Right.
that they have a way to keep themselves fit. I do my horse stuff, which I get up early, but not that early. Is there a way that it still meshes? And so that's the thing about what are the things that are independent to you, the things that are unique for you. And does it match somebody else or is it congruent? Does it work okay that they go out and run and want to come back and make love for 2 hours and then get up and make breakfast?
Hey.
I'm into that. We'll have more
Mhm.
conversations, but that's certainly something that would get my attention. So it's
Right.
that kind of conversation when you know who you are and then you can say it to the other person, then you go, tell me about you. So I've learned so many things that people do on Sundays by just asking that question. It's been kind of fascinating.
Absolutely. And also the part of that is also about flexibility and change too. Like I was reflecting myself, is that my routine now is different from what it was 6 years ago. You
Yeah.
know, 6 years ago, I'd be a night owl. I wouldn't go to bed till like 1, 2 in the morning sometimes. And I'd get up around 9 and that'd be the way my day was. But then things changed during the pandemic because I decided I want to do a different level of fitness. So I started going hiking in the morning. So now, because I get up at like 6:15 in the morning to go hiking, I go to bed by 11:30 at the latest. So my evening is shifted like a few hours earlier than it was before. And so with somebody who may have different schedules than you do, maybe there's an adaptation that you both can make where you can fit so it does match each other. So you're not necessarily going on the level of work because there's a 4-hour difference in how we go, that sort of thing. So not necessarily from the get-go that what they say is the law and you cannot agree with it sort of thing. It's just like, oh, that's different. Where am I? And you might discover the fact that you've been wanting to do something, like I'm saying, like, if a guy gets up at 5 in the morning to go running, maybe you wanted to do something to motivate you to get up early and go running, and he's the perfect person for you for that reason. So there's lots of different, I'm not saying for you personally, but I'm talking about somebody listening, that sort of matching thing that can happen. So it's like be willing to listen and find out, and then to reflect. Not necessarily does it fit me, could it fit me?
For sure. And I know a couple that they need very different amounts of sleep, really different amounts of sleep. So what they've worked out is she stays up as late as she can to spend time with him. And they like always have some interesting thing they're going to watch. And then they go to bed together. And then she goes to sleep and then he gets back up and goes and does his thing. Or they make time to be together in the morning. So it's not that they're spending awake time apart when they're really needing to have closeness then. It's that he doesn't need to lay in bed as long. So he just goes and he plays computer games, which she could care less about, but she's asleep. So that's the thing, that when you say, this is what makes my life best, what makes your life best, and how can we still mesh? And also, as you said, how we all can change. Gosh, yeah, I used to be early morning. I mean, I woke up bright-eyed, bushy-tailed early in the morning. And then when my husband died, I can't tell you, it just switched. I became such a night owl. So I've had that conversation with men in my life about, this is my schedule now. How can we work that out? And, it's eating and social time. And what do you do in your social time? What do you do in your alone time? And that you are very clear about. The independent part is What do you do to soothe yourself? Would you like to have somebody else be with you that helps you be your best person? And how can you do that together? Where I'm going to talk about that good enough line again, that you like things that really match. And you're like, boy, we both like getting up and riding our bicycles and headed for the beach. And how great if you both feel that way. And if you don't both feel that way, then where is it on the scale of it's okay enough? Whatever you do and I do in this particular category, both people, it's good enough. I have friends I go ride with and I get to sleep in more. Or I just need my quiet time in the morning to meditate and have my coffee while you go off and ride bikes with your friends. It's not that I'm not awake. That's just not going to make me my best person for the rest of the day. So I think a lot of the independence is just acknowledging who you are really, what makes you your best person as a single person, and then what could contribute to being your best person in a relationship. Like you said, somebody could encourage you, like, this is not me, but I've really wanted to figure out how to get up earlier in the morning and do stuff. Wow, it'd be really interesting to meet somebody that does that. And if they were gentle and kind about it, I might be inspired, because lots of us need an accountability partner. So if you have somebody that they're enthusiastic about doing it and you go, okay, I could maybe do that. So yeah, I love that. So as long as you're clear about each of your parts and you can talk about it, then so often, not always, but so often you can really reach a nice middle ground that's good enough for everybody.
Yeah. But it's the sense that it's not necessarily about compromise, it's about adaptability. And the thing about being independent, one of the benefits of being independent is that you don't have, well, I say it this way, you might not have habits that you got to break to be with somebody else. The challenge with being independent, if you've been on your own for a long time, and I use the term being on your own for a long time, which I know I have, there are certain habits I may have grown into in my life that may not work when I'm in a partnership.
Yeah.
So realizing, and it's going to sound so simplistic to say it this way, but the difference between being single and being in a couple can be quite dramatic for some people, because they've got some things they do when they're single which they can't do or won't do when they're in a couple. But then again, there are some things to do when they're single that they want to bring into the relationship, like saying, like they get up early and they want their partner wants to do the same thing. So it is a navigational area where it isn't just cut and dried. It's this the way it is, tough luck, and it's not going to change. The independence is really where you start from. Yeah. And also it's about acknowledging that's what you're up to, what you've been about, what your way of being is. And if you meet somebody, how hard and fast are those rules, or how much flexibility do you have to adapt to a new situation? Because again, like being a more recently a dating person through, because I'm working on matchmakers, they know me and my work and they want to put me up with their clients. But it's I find myself entertaining more to be like to be with this person or that person. Usually none of them shows up, but the thing is, like, what would I need to change about me being independent that would work? Because it's a question that comes up a lot. And if you've been on a single for a long time, you may not have considered it, but definitely a question you ask yourself is, what defines me as a single person that is cut and dried, and what's flexible? And so you know for yourself when you meet somebody what you can change and what you won't change.
That is such a good inventory. That is such a good inventory.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell my Christmas shopping story again, because it so fits this, that I'd been single for a very long time between my divorce and when I married my late husband. And we got married in June, and it was getting in December, and I was off at the mall and I love looking at the decorations and talking to the people and the music. And I like the crowds. It works for me a lot. And all of a sudden my phone rings and it's Tony, and he goes, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm at the mall and I'm having a great time." And he goes, "It's 8:30. When are you coming home?" And I went, "Oh, I didn't think about the time."
Yep.
I didn't think about I should tell somebody, because I'd been single and nobody cared that I was not home at that particular time. And I said, "I am so sorry. I didn't even think about it. It's been a really long time and I hadn't thought about it." And he wasn't mad. He was worried, I could be dead on the street, because it was unusual that we hadn't talked in a bunch of hours. And so I thought, oh, I had been single for such a long time. I wasn't even not doing it. There hadn't been a need. And I hadn't thought this would be a really good, I'd like it if he called me. So I made it a very important mental note from then on to just, this is where I'm going, and this is when I think I'll be back. And oh gosh, I'm getting kind of carried away. I think it'll be longer. And I always felt like that was such a caring thing to do for him. And it was because he cared for me. And it didn't feel like I was sacrificing anything or compromising anything. I felt like that's a considerate thing to do. And I'd like it too. So it was so like, duh, you know,
Yeah.
out of left field for me. And I am such a considerate person. I shocked myself.
But that's the thing, is we don't necessarily notice those habits we have because they're unconscious, they're automatic. And so we might do things that if we were thinking about the fact we're in a relationship now, we wouldn't even do. But because it's just our natural behavior for many years, it still carries over. And so I understand that first Christmas is different, but you didn't realize it until you got the call. Is a wake-up call to go, hang on a second, oh, now it's different. Yeah, that's a profound piece.
It felt that when it happened, and it made me now take that little piece and look at the bigger pieces of you're a couple. And it's so weird because it's like I knew I was a couple. I was happily married. I was really happy to be with him, but I wasn't in the habit of doing coupley things for a really long time. I mean, I'd been in relationships. It wasn't the same. It's not the same as being married. I'd never lived with anybody all that time. That was the other big adjustment. I now, after 20 years, moved in with a man and a teenage girl.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about it a lot ahead of time, good thing. And then there were so many other things that come up about living with other people. I mean, I walked around, I'm in my house, I walk around, I go get stuff when I've gotten out of the shower, and it's like, oh, there's other people, you know, there's a kid in the house. I have to think about that. And what's in the refrigerator and not. And the other thing that was so funny is I am insanely organized. I like to just be able to open a drawer and stick my hand in there, and I know without having to look where the scissors are. And I never knew where the scissors were in our house ever. So I went to Costco and I bought one of those big packages of 10 scissors, and I put one in my desk and I said, here, Bree, you put these wherever you want in the house, just never touch mine. And she said, okay. So she had 9 scissors to pick from that often she had no idea where they were. She'd need to go looking for them. And she'd come in and she goes, if I stay right here, can I use the one in your desk? Because I know it's there. I said, sure. So it was those kind of, you learn how to navigate with new people. And boy, did I learn a lot. I really learned a lot about living with other people again, because I hadn't in such a long time. So you talk about navigating being single then versus being with a couple. I felt like I was learning it like getting the bends. I was getting it every day. I learned some more new things. Yeah.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Boy, that's really true. So I think that's what's really important. So my boundary was I needed to know where my scissors were. And there were times I'd take them with me downstairs because I knew I did go, and I knew that I might not be able to find the scissors that were downstairs, even if there were 5. So I would take mine with me and stick them in my pocket to bring them back upstairs because I didn't want to be mad at them all the time, or her. Tony was just as organized as me. I didn't want to be upset. I didn't want to be frustrated. So I think, how can I do this so that I feel comfortable? So I have my scissors.
That's a big one. And the thing also is being proactive to create a solution that is not going to require them to change anything else.
Yes.
It just makes your life easier, which is a smart move because it's a selfish act in a way that works for you and for everybody else.
Yep.
You know, that's powerful. So it's really, I mean, it sounds so simplistic in a way as well because it's just scissors. But taking that to a bigger scale, like all these different things where we tend to get bent out of shape because it's not the way we wanted it, because suddenly there's another person in our lives. But choosing to do things that are resolving the issue without fixing them, sort of thing, because it's a challenge. We want to fix them to make our life easier. It's like, no, you really want to do things that are making the whole thing work better. Yes, you may have an abundance of scissors, but the end result is there's never a need anymore. You're not running around desperate for it. But I want to talk about that resentment.
It did crack me up that sometimes I'd open a drawer and there'd be 4 pairs of scissors in one drawer. That would I just had to say that because it was so funny.
So I'm going to speak to this piece about the resentment piece that can build up as well. But I know we're going to take a break for the commercial in any second. So just hold that thought because we want to talk when we come back about what happens when you get the emotional piece into the conversation.
Oh
So
yeah,
we'll come back in a
resentment.
break.
Wah.
Oh yeah, so we'll come back in a minute. So after the commercial break, we'll see you in a minute.
Look.
I think. Maybe. Okay.
We're talking about, are you an independent dater? And we're going to talk about the resentment that can happen, because that is just, it's going to happen. How does it not happen? And what do you do, right?
Yeah. So first of all, let's set up. I'm going to set up the context of this, because what came up when you were talking about the scissors just reminded me that when we get into a place where a new relationship, what we don't always realize is that we have boundaries we had in place in an independent state that are now being crossed, overridden, trodden on, destroyed by that relationship. And we don't know about it, so we don't know what to do with it. And so what happens is that these inner resentments show up, and upsets, and feeling wronged, and all these different other stuff. At the same time, you're thinking you're moving to this wonderful, loving relationship. Really, it should be perfect. But all this other stuff underneath is showing up because we didn't adjust our own boundaries to accommodate a new person.
Such
So,
a good
yeah.
point, Barry. Yeah, boy, realistic. That's a challenge. And realistic about the other person, because it's effortless to be micro thinking about us and all about us and
Of course.
what a good person we are, and we're trying our best. How
Right.
come they're not receiving it, and why aren't they more appreciative? It was so interesting living with a teenager. I'm glad we worked it out. And then, but there's this macro where there's another person, and then there's another person, and then there's this relationship thing. And yeah, it really stretches us, I think, in really important, good ways, if we're willing to stretch and take in more information, and to be willing to also say, geez, I know this is hard for all of us, and here's the hard part for me, and I don't know what to do about it. Could we come up with a solution together? Often that'll help make it feel a little bit more like a team. And then sometimes what I learned really important is a minor kid, they get to be number one, not in a bratty way or an inconsiderate way, but until they live on their own and they're independent, they're number one. No doubt about it. And I knew that, and it was good that I kept reminding myself about that. So there's another thing where there's no leeway. If you're going to live with minor kids, you're not going to be number one until they're independent. Hopefully 18 does that, and it did in my case, but it's a challenge. And then, are there other things that there's more of a higher priority to that person, that they're going to need this more than you do? I think I might have told, my parents had this friend that was a therapist, and she would get couples together, and she'd say, okay, what is it you really need? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you need this? And the other person, they'd say like an 8. And they say, well, how important is to you? Do you care about this very much? And they often just said, no, it's like a 4 or a 3. So the person that was an 8, okay, we're going to all move to that direction. And they do that back and forth. And she said one day there was a couple that the person said it was an 80, and the person said, is there less than 0? I truly could care less. So she ended up writing a book about that practice and technique that said, is there anything less than 0? So sometimes I think that could be really helpful when you're having this discussion about what is your absolute, and because sometimes I've found the other person really doesn't care.
It doesn't matter. I mean, just go back for a second about the teenage thing. I remember a relationship I was in many years ago. My girlfriend at the time, she was widowed, but also she had 2 kids, and I got really well with them. She was great, so we had a good rapport. But the thing is, it's like the recognition is that I'm dating 3 people basically.
Yep.
So not just the girlfriend; it's the kids' accommodation too, and also because she's widowed, there isn't another parent to take care of the kids. So the dating experience was much more had to be navigated, negotiated. It wasn't just like her and me, just no problem, do whatever we want. And so if you are entering into a relationship with somebody who's got kids who aren't out of the house yet, going in with your eyes open and being aware that what you're entering into is a lot more complicated than just one person is a smart move. Doesn't mean you have to know all the ins and outs of what to do with it, but just going in with that awareness can change the whole experience when you walk into the relationship. Because then, again, you don't have to be an independent dater, you get to be interdependent. You get to be have to navigate in and involve, but also be able to take care of yourself too. Because the other part, as you mentioned right before the break, was about the boundary piece, is that we may not know we're doing it, but we are automatically creating boundaries when we're on our own. An independent person, you have boundaries where things that you say yes to, things that you say no to, things that you have agreements with, things that you're clearly you say no, you will not be doing at all. When you get into a relationship, those boundaries oftentimes don't fit the new paradigm. And which is why that resentment stuff shows up, because within it's like that person who suddenly connected with wants to get close, and meanwhile the boundaries in the way and they're pushing up against it, and we're getting resentful. Yet we want the intimacy. So we've got this dichotomy going on inside. So if you're dating someone, this is fairly new in a relationship, this energy might show up that doesn't seem to fit. This is likely why it's showing up, because you haven't done anything to like tear down your walls, so to speak.
Oh, resentment. Boy, Barry, that is such an important subject, because typically, for me personally, and when I talk to people, we get resentful because we feel unseen, unheard, uncared about, that somebody's we don't feel like they're making an effort. We feel like they're going against us. And hurt, because generally begins with hurt, can effortlessly, very quickly turn into resentment. And then nobody wants to talk to anybody. We physically pull back, then men will emotionally pull back and physically pull back too. And that's not the way to solve this. Where if you know that feeling, we've all had that feeling of, how dare you, or I'm so hurt, I'm going to sit over here and lick my wounds, or you're just such an ass. Certainly have all felt that. That when that comes up, to say it out loud, this is really hard. This happened, and wow, it was really hard. And did you not know this about me? Did I not tell you? Are you ignoring it? Because this is awful. And boy, is that a challenge for people to do on their own. So often finding somebody that's the third person just to help you have this conversation is imperative, because resentment is definitely like a snowball. It will never get better on its own. It'll just get worse and worse. And it is a relationship killer. I've watched it over and over.
Oh, yeah. It is. And also oftentimes it's so unconscious or so below the level of awareness that we don't realize that we're destroying the relationship without even taking anything into account. So we're talking about these things in this podcast episode, so you can actually start looking at yourself and go, hang on a second, is this true for me? Because you might discover, hang on a second, I realize I'm doing that without realizing I'm doing it. It's time to wake up and start to choose something differently. Again, are you choosing to be in this relationship? In which case, all the stuff you're bringing in that doesn't fit the relationship has to be resolved, transformed, or dropped. And if you don't do that, the relationship won't survive. So it is a priority to look at this.
It's one of the times when I say great sex and love is not enough. It's not enough.
Indeed.
It's so sad how many people can't stay together and they'll still say, and I love them so much. Because if you have these things that keep you feeling yourself, that doesn't mesh with the other person creating this relationship, you can't stay together happily. You can stay together, but you're going to be miserable.
Absolutely.
Both people are going to be miserable. Yeah. So really being brave. It's such a brave thing to have that conversation with yourself and then with another person. Yeah. This is what I really need. I really need this. Can you do this for me? And what do you need from me to do this for me? And could you do half of it or some of it or have it look different? Oh, it's the most hard, valuable, productive conversation I've ever had with clients and myself.
Yeah. Well, the reality is that dating, it does require those say come to Jesus conversations. No, me.
Oh, I say that all the time.
But it is that.
You have to say that even as a Jewish person.
I know, but it's the sense of that entering a relationship requires these self-reflective conversations with ourselves. Because again, What are you choosing? If you are an independent dater, how long do you want to hold on to the independence, and how soon do you want to be in that wonderful, joyful, fulfilling relationship you've been dreaming of for so long? And realizing the two things don't necessarily go together. So can you let down the walls, and can you have a conversation with your partner? And also, when you notice, because again, self-awareness being key, we talked about that many times. When you notice that you have these things in the way, can you talk to your partner about them so they know you're not doing it against them? You're saying, I'm sorry, I'm so practiced at this, I need to break the habits, but I'd love your enrollment or your patience whilst I work this out. Because that stuff, if you don't talk about it, just gets in the way.
Oh, yeah. Instead of it's you and you need to change, it's like,
It's
I
me.
can see how this is not making my life better in a relationship. I can
Right.
see how if I made some adjustments in the way I think, in the way I act, I could be happier. I'm not sacrificing myself. I'm making myself even more. And boy, I have to tell you, Barry, I listen and listen. Sometimes I'm Zooming with people, but usually it's on the phone. And I can feel the resistance, and I can feel it's sitting there on the surface. And the minute they go, oh, it lands,
Yeah.
I could be happier. Oh, wow. Okay. Because why should I change for them? And they're not making an effort for me. I mean, that's always where that conversation begins. And I'm used to that. And I understand that I was certainly like that a couple times, at least a couple times in my life. This is how we become coaches, because we've been through all this.
It's,
But
yes,
boy,
that's the skill set. The mistakes we make become our teaching methods.
uh-huh. And when you finally understand it's for your betterment
Yeah.
to consider an adjustment, that's all it is. And then you get to try it on, and if you're like, yeah, that really didn't work. I'm glad I tried it, but it didn't work for me.
Mm-hmm.
So then it wouldn't work for the relationship. Or like, oh my gosh, it made my life better, easier, smoother. I feel more open. I feel more important. I feel more given to, because what it does, that wall that you talked about, it blocks some of the love that we are desperate to receive. That when we're
Absolutely.
so busy being right and rigid, there's not a lot of room for receiving with all of that.
Well, to speak to what you said right at the beginning about independent women,
Yeah.
this is one of the things, and I want to speak it's about independent men as well, because the thing is, and it's another piece of the puzzle, is that for those of us who've been single for a long time, oftentimes we've got such strong boundaries, such strong walls, as I mentioned, we don't let things in that easily either. And so if I'm dating an independent woman, is she open enough to be emotionally connected, or is she going to be so independent there's no way my love, my care, my desire can reach her, and vice versa? So that softening of the walls, of the boundaries, is part of the process too. Because it's not so much about you softening enough to be able to connect the other person; it's also you softening enough to receive the other person.
For sure.
Because if you're so independent, you've had your life so much, especially if you've been, and we talk about this in our work too, if you've been wounded in the past, abused in the past, hurt in the past, you may have such firm boundaries to protect yourself that when you meet a new person, those boundaries are still in place. So you don't let them in. So you won't even feel like you've been loved, which is not really what it's about. So if you want to be in a healthy relationship, self-examination, that boundary adjustment, and having an open place to be in love is kind of key for this.
It can be self-defeating, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you think, here's my list of have to haves,
Right.
can't haves, you now have a list that you canceled that out with what you have to have. If you really are clear about that, and then you make the list of, gosh, here's some things that might be interesting or might be fun, or I'd be willing to explore, or there's blank places. I tell them, leave blank lines of things you not even know about yet. So that as long as somebody is not trampling over any of these things that you have to have,
Right.
who knows what there would be. So if you've already got these intact, you don't have to be on such guard. You don't have to be so picking every little, am I okay with that? Am I okay with that? If it's not on this list, be open. I mean, I tell people I've had really interesting conversations with men at a first meeting who I really wasn't interested in seeing them a second time, but I
Mm-hmm.
learned a lot about them and what they did and their families and their background. And because I wasn't into, well, I can't even talk to him because he's like that or thinks that way. No, I don't. I've never had that experience. I just say at the end whether or not I'm interested in seeing them more because of what their ideas. But I've been fascinated learning stuff because there's been times I go, they're not the person, but boy, I am adding that to my list because I was open to hearing. That might be a nice to have thing, not necessarily a have to, but a nice to. Wow. The other day I talked to a guy who we are so far apart in our religion, but we had the best conversation. And one of his questions, he goes, I ask everybody this. He said, have you been to therapy? And I said, I love that question because I want to ask everybody that question.
Yep.
So that was really fun.
Yeah. And that is important to have. Like, clearly it's what you must have and what you don't want. And clearly, and the joy of this is that each relationship, even if it's not going to succeed, will give you something to learn from, some gift, some reminder, something that will help you along the way.
So being independent also means being fluid outside of the absolutes. You really need a lot of fluidity. And that's the problem with people who have been hurt and damaged and abused, and everything's rigid because everything has to be on guard. Too much bad has gotten through. So boy, that takes some really important personal work with a therapist or a coach, because you need to lower that. You can't be on guard for everything. You need to figure out how to not be on guard for everything and trust that you have a really good in place of what you have to have. Then you can be much more in receiving, because I feel like I receive at every first meeting, even if I don't want to see them again. I received intention, I received compliments, I received information, I received more confirmation, no, not mine.
Oh yeah.
And so I always feel like that was a good thing to do. I don't feel discouraged or frustrated. And because I so know where my boundaries are, as you have been so clear about saying yours. So what we teach people is to pick what's the absolutes and be really open-minded about everything else. Because I'll tell you, there's been a couple of things I went, I never thought about. Yeah, I want to learn more about that. I would go out with him again to learn more about that I would have never thought of before.
Yeah. This is the joy of dating, in a sense. It's like exploration and refinement and understanding. But just a little tag on what you said earlier as well about the pieces where we've got wounds and stuff we carry around, that baggage is, there's memes been around for years about, you want to find somebody to help you unpack the baggage. Like, no, you don't want your partners to do that. That's for the therapist, coach, guide to help you with, because frankly, you want to meet somebody already whole, already healed, and you want to be that way too. So when you meet somebody, you're both in your best, most available, most honest, most real place. I mean, frankly, that's what dating is really supposed to be about, isn't it?
Well, and what I've learned personally and professionally is it's really good to be as healed as possible, because stuff's going to come up. It's just going to come up, because our insides will not always allow things to come forward. That there's some things that can only be healed in a relationship.
Yeah.
That you now have an example of somebody who's loving and caring and warm. You've tested all along the way. I mean, this happened to me with my marriage to Tony, for sure, that things came up and I was like, I didn't even know that was there. I thought I'd already healed that. It was just this extra level, this extra layer that would never have come up if I hadn't allowed myself to be loved the way he loved me and to love him back. And because I'd done so much work already, I was able to allow it to come up and then work through it and get healed. And he said the same thing. And that was like, oh, I want that again. And so it really encourages me, for me personally and with my clients, to heal as much as you know about now. Because trust me, there's always more. There's never nothing.
If you're still on the planet, there's more to work on. Absolutely.
Yeah. So being independent just means you know your mind, you know what makes you happy, you can get yourself through the day, you know how to navigate the world, you can get your bills paid, you can get your car fixed, you know how to live life in the world. You hopefully know how to make friends, you know how to get gas. I mean, there's just interesting things that needy, dependent people aren't very good at. Their lives are always this big dithering mess, which I don't want in my life. Thank you very much. So being independent is a really good thing. it's really good. I like it. I like that I am. I consider myself independent. And that interdependent, boy, when you really find it and you allow it to be flowing back and forth like the whole infinity yin yang, that's the good addiction, I think.
Well, the thing is when you said about independence, what came up for me is that independent piece oftentimes for some people means freedom.
Yeah.
And so when they get into relationships like dating, there's almost a sense they get
Yep.
I'll say limited freedom, I'm just going to say trapped.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sense of being, so the challenge is, again, being independent and being on your own. You have the sense of freedom. So in your relationship, are you going to give it some of that stuff up? Or are you willing to look for freedom in the relationship, which is the next level to play at? So it's a choice.
Was it okay with me to check in with somebody when I was going to be out shopping? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I could have chosen not.
Right.
And I said, that's really reasonable. And I'd like that too. And that would be really bitchy if I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I was grateful that he brought it up to my attention and was concerned, but not mad, that I could go, yeah, I didn't even realize I was making a choice. Now that I realize I'm making this choice, I'm now going to choose to do this instead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's a navigating thing for sure, to move
Right.
from being single to being in a couple, whether you live apart together or you live together or you get married. It still you continue to make choices of, how do I stay me and how do you stay you? And then how do we create an us along with it?
That's the key. Absolutely.
And I have to brag. I'm not sure
Oh.
if I think I told you that I went to it was a wedding reception for the third time for a client on
Mm-hmm.
Saturday. And it was so much fun. They said in their speech that nobody'd be there without me because I talked her into going out with them a second time.
I love it.
And both of them were widowed and had been single for quite a while. And we had talked about it during their dating process. Plus, when he found out that the only reason she went out with him a second time is because I talked her into it, he took us to lunch to say thank you. That the things that they'd worked on together because of my encouragement and my talking to them of how to navigate being a couple again and to be a different couple, because they had been a couple before, but now they were a very different couple together. And
Right.
so it so fits this subject of, if you really want to, and it will make your life feel better, even better, to be in a couple, this is the part of the navigating from single to couple. I think this is really important, the independent part, don't you think?
Yeah. And also want to make sure we say that being independent when you're single is not a bad thing by any means.
No.
But it's being aware that you're independent, because awareness is always the key to opening the door. And so the interdependence piece we talked about before, and again, we've dived deeper into this in previous episodes way back, talking about codependency and interdependence being very different things.
Mm-hmm.
But being independent, you can move to interdependence fairly easily, because ideally, well, sorry, another sidebar for a second. Some people are very independent because they're so resentful of being codependent. They don't know how to navigate interdependence. So that's another level again. So if you're someone who's being independent out of fear of being enmeshed in a relationship and you're trying to date at the same time, you've got some stuff to work on.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, you want to talk to one of us for sure.
Oh, I'm going to add that to the list about the difference between independent and codependent, because that is a huge subject too.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really important. Because I'm thinking even in friendships, how do you stay independent in a friendship and still be receptive to what they need, being a friend, what their independence is, that maybe they want to spend more time with you and you're not as comfortable with that? That's a perfect place to even have that conversation, because you're not feeling romantic and having sex. You're at a more higher, a less deep level, but it's a perfect way to practice this, is just with friendships too.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is key. I mean, that's what I'm saying. This independent data stuff, it sounds so simplistic, but there's a lot to it. And I want to make sure that we've covered enough of it to give you folks a pause for thought, to realize there may be more to work on, but also how some of the times you choose dating can come from a much better place than maybe you've done in the past. Because it's worth doing the work. If you're in a healthy or loving relationship, it doesn't generally happen that easily. It does require some effort on both parts. And if you're an independent dater, maybe a bit more work's involved, but it's worth it.
And that's why we're here. And if this has even piqued your interest, if you're like, gosh, I've experienced that, or I keep meeting people that are like that, and what do I do? What do I need to learn different? What do I need to do differently? That's why Barry and I are here. Because the thing about what we do is, yeah, we generally have kind of a process and we know what to do with people, but we so customize it. So that's why we need to talk to you in person, one-on-one, so that we can figure out, well, what are the pieces that would fit you? What are the things that have been a challenge for you that will help, what answers would get you to have better results?
Right.
I'm hoping that they heard that in this.
I hope so.
Too.
So how can they reach you?
Yes, the way to talk to me is to go to my website, which is www.theperfectcatch.com, and click down on the questionnaire, and it'll ask you 10 brief questions and then give you access to my calendar so that you can schedule a complimentary conversation with me and talk about what has been the challenge of staying independent or being too dependent and the kind of people that you're meeting. You can also join my mailing list. You'll get a repeat of our podcast and get updates on what it is I'm doing in my life. And also, if you scroll to the bottom of the screen, you'll see all the icons for my social media of Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram and Pinterest and YouTube, where you can find all the replays of our over 170 now podcasts that Barry and I have done together. You can also send me a personal email at Christine@theperfectcatch.com. And how do people get a hold of you, Mr. Barry?
Well, similarly to Christine, I have a website and one of the ways to reach me. So my website is my name, which is barryselby.com. And also on my website, there are a couple of links on the homepage, one of which is a link to my calendar where you just take the next step. And on there, you also have a question that you fill out, and then you can get on my calendar. We can have a conversation and see where you are. And I can certainly give some guidance, but also some next steps that may help you. And if you want to work with me, we can talk about that too. At the bottom of the home screen is a link to my email list. We can opt in to be on my email list where I send out emails every week with replays of this show and other things I'm working on, new offers, invitations, and other things I'm doing as well too. Also, there is a quiz on my website, which is at barryselby.com/quiz. And that is the relationship readiness assessment. And quite a few people have taken it. And frankly, it can be eye-opening to see where you are in this process of dating and understanding where you are, what you're looking for and what you want, even if you don't know what you want, because this is really a good quiz for that. So go to barryselby.com/quiz. It is a 35 question, I think. I'm trying to remember. I've adapted some of the questions. Anyway, I recommend you take it. There's no investment except your time and thoughts. Fill it out and you'll get some answers back about how you're doing. On social media, my social media is all my name except for one place. So Barry Selby is on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, of course, tons of stuff on YouTube, Pinterest, that sort of thing. On Instagram and Threads is the real Barry Selby because my original account got hacked. And if you want to send me an email, you can send me an email at barryselby.com. And like Christine, I'm here to help you, support you, and guide you where you want to go and what you want to have. So reach out to one of us, both of us.
Well, we're here. And we're always here every week, even on the 4th of July, on Thursday at 1 o'clock Pacific and 4 o'clock Eastern and all the times in between. We'd love for you to watch them, share them with your friends, subscribe, like. We love hearing your questions or comments about what we've talked about. If you have a subject you'd like us to talk about in the future, that would be great. And you can also watch and listen to us, right, Barry?
Indeed, you can listen to. We're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all the different podcast platforms. So if you can't watch us live because you're sitting at your computer watching us, if you're going to the gym or going shopping or just driving, you can take us with you as a podcast and listen to us in your ear and get personal, direct information and inspiration from us every day.
Yep, we're always here to be like Jiminy Cricket. You can have us just sitting on your shoulder and listening in your ear.
Yeah, right.
So I hope that you have a happy independent day, and this is how to navigate being an independent dater.
How perfect.
I thought so.
Yeah.
See you next week.
See you next week. Take care.
Bye.